After my husband and I announced our pregnancy at his celebration party, my jealous sister-in-law tried to publicly humiliate me, but her cruel plan backfired spectacularly, leading to her arrest and the collapse of her marriage. You ever meet someone who just couldn't stand seeing you happy? The kind of person who smiles at you, but you can see the storm brewing right behind their eyes? That was my sister-in-law, Kayla. From the very beginning, she made it her mission to ruin my peace, to twist every happy moment into something sour. She wasn't just jealous, she was obsessed with my husband, Harry, with our relationship, and with the fact that he had finally built a life that didn't revolve around her. It's strange, isn't it? How some people can't handle losing control over someone they once had wrapped around their finger. Every time Harry smiled at me, I could feel her eyes burning into me, like she wanted to tear that joy right out of my chest. I tried to ignore it, told myself she was just overprotective, that she'd eventually accept me, but deep down I knew better. There was something darker in her. Something calculating. She would make these tiny comments, sharp as glass but coated in honey, things like, "Oh, Harry never liked women like you before," or "You're lucky he settled down, he used to have higher standards." I'd laugh it off in front of everyone, but when I was alone, those words would replay in my head like a bad song. Still, I stayed polite. I told myself family drama wasn't worth my peace. I kept my head high, smiled through gritted teeth, and tried to believe that kindness could soften her cruelty. But I was wrong. Because the moment my husband and I announced we were expecting, the jealousy that had been simmering inside her boiled over. And that's when her mask started to crack. I just didn't know then how far she'd go to destroy me. I met Harry during one of the quietest, loneliest periods of my life, and somehow he became the calm that I didn't even know I was searching for. He was gentle, patient, and endlessly kind. The kind of man who listened more than he spoke, who made everyone feel seen. Loving him felt easy, natural, like breathing. When we got married, I thought I was stepping into a simple, happy future. But what I didn't realize was that marrying Harry also meant inheriting his sister, Kayla, the storm hiding behind his sunshine. From the moment I met her, she had this strange energy, like she was sizing me up, silently measuring how much of her brother's love I had taken from her. She'd always been the dominant one in Harry's life, the big sister who called the shots, made his choices, and treated him more like a possession than a sibling. It wasn't love, it was control disguised as care. And I could see how deeply it was rooted in her. She'd make little jokes about how Harry doesn't do anything without my approval, and when we got engaged, she actually laughed and said, "Guess I'll have to share my brother now." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. After we got married, she'd call him every single day, asking about things that were none of her business, our plans, our finances, even our arguments. Once, she told me she should have been his best man because she knew him better than anyone. It was weird, uncomfortable, but Harry brushed it off, saying she'd always been protective. I wanted to believe that, but something in her eyes told a different story. It wasn't just protectiveness, it was obsession. And as much as Harry loved me, I could tell he was still blind to how dangerous his sister's love truly was. From the very beginning, Kayla made it painfully clear that she didn't approve of me. She never said it directly, but every look, every tone, every sarcastic laugh carried the same message. You don't belong here. The first time Harry introduced me to her, she sized me up like she was appraising a piece of furniture she didn't order. Her smile was tight, her words overly sweet, but her eyes said everything. She'd ask questions that sounded polite but were really digs in disguise. "So, what exactly do you do?" Or, "Oh, you're from that neighborhood." It was constant, subtle, and exhausting. Every time we were in the same room, she made me feel like an outsider in my own relationship. She'd bring up Harry's exes, telling stories about them as if she missed them, describing how perfect they were, how they fit in better with the family. Once, she even showed me an old photo album and pointed to one of his ex-girlfriends, saying, "We all thought she'd be the one." I laughed it off, but it stung. I started to avoid family gatherings just to keep my peace. I tried talking to Harry about it, but he didn't see the full picture. "She just has a weird sense of humor," he said, brushing it off. I didn't want to come between him and his family, so I bit my tongue and kept pretending everything was fine. But deep down, I felt her resentment growing. It was like she couldn't stand that I had taken a place in his heart she once controlled. Every smile she gave me felt like a warning, a reminder that she wasn't done testing me yet. And no matter how much I tried to stay kind, it became clear, Kayla wasn't just jealous. She was dangerous. Our wedding day was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, the kind of memory you carry forever, wrapped in warmth and love. But even that day, Kayla found a way to poison it. I remember walking down the aisle, my heart racing, my eyes locked on Harry's smile, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Then I saw her, standing in the front row, dressed in black, as if she were attending a funeral instead of her brother's wedding. She didn't smile, didn't clap, didn't even try to hide her disdain. Guests whispered about her outfit. Some thought it was a joke, but I knew better. It was a message to me, loud and clear. This marriage was a mistake in her eyes. During the reception, she hovered close, pretending to help but really just criticizing everything. The flowers, the music, even the cake. When she finally stood up to give her toast, I braced myself. She started off pretending to be emotional, thanking everyone for coming, talking about losing her brother to another woman. Then she smirked and said, "Well, I guess we can all hope she keeps him happy, since none of the others managed to." The room went silent. Some people laughed awkwardly, others looked horrified. I just stood there, frozen, smiling through tears that burned behind my eyes. Harry looked furious, but I stopped him from saying anything. I didn't want drama. I wanted peace. But peace was never something Kayla allowed anyone to have. That night, as we left for our honeymoon, she hugged Harry tightly and whispered something I couldn't hear. He looked pale afterward. I didn't ask what she said, but a chill ran through me. I knew then, this woman wasn't just jealous. She was plotting something deeper. After the wedding, I decided to cut my losses and keep my distance from Kayla. I had tolerated enough of her drama, and I wanted to start my marriage with peace, not tension. Harry agreed. He knew how much she'd hurt me with that cruel wedding speech, and he promised to set some boundaries. For a while, it actually worked. We moved into our own home, far from the constant noise of his family, and for the first time, life felt calm. We cooked dinner together, watched movies, laughed about little things, and started planning for the future. But even in that peace, there was always a shadow, Kayla. She'd text Harry constantly, asking why he didn't visit, guilt-tripping him with emotional messages like, "You forgot about your real family." Sometimes she'd call late at night, pretending it was important, only to gossip or complain. I tried not to interfere, but it hurt seeing how much control she still tried to hold over him. Then, one day, Harry got a call that changed everything. His parents told him Kayla had suffered a miscarriage. The news hit hard, even for me. I couldn't imagine that kind of pain, and despite everything, my heart broke for her. We went to visit her in the hospital, and for the first time, she looked fragile, broken, even. She cried when she saw me, apologized over and over for how she'd treated me. I believed her. Maybe, just maybe, this tragedy had changed her. I told myself forgiveness was the right thing to do. Harry hugged her tightly, and for a moment, it felt like we could finally heal as a family. But deep down, something still felt uneasy. Because while pain can humble some people, for others, it only makes their bitterness grow stronger. For a few months after her miscarriage, Kayla seemed like a completely different person. She called to check on me, sent sweet messages, and even dropped off gifts for our son. She smiled more, spoke softly, and acted like the sister I always wished she'd been. At first, I was cautious, waiting for the catch, but she kept surprising me. She'd ask about my day, about work, about Harry, and for once, her tone wasn't dripping with sarcasm. She told me she'd started therapy and was learning to manage her emotions better. I wanted to believe her. I really did. So I gave her another chance. We started inviting her over for dinner again. She'd play with our son, help me in the kitchen, and laugh like nothing bad had ever happened between us. Harry was happy too. It meant the world to him that his sister and his wife were finally getting along. For a moment, I let myself believe that the past was behind us. But little things started to slip through the cracks. She'd compliment me and then sneak in a dig like, "You're lucky Harry puts up with your moods," or she'd talk about how lonely she felt without a husband and child, her eyes lingering on us in a way that made me uncomfortable. I brushed it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. When she mentioned how much she missed having a baby, I tried to comfort her, not realizing those words were seeds of resentment taking root again. One night, I overheard her on the phone telling someone, "She gets everything, and I get nothing." That's when I realized her kindness wasn't healing. It was boiling beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to explode. I just didn't know how soon that moment would come. It started small, so small that at first, I didn't even notice the shift. Kayla's jokes began to sting again. They were subtle, wrapped in laughter, like she wanted to see how much she could get away with. She'd say things like, "Wow, you look tired. Motherhood really changes a woman," or "Harry used to love when I cooked that dish. Guess you don't make it the same way." I tried to ignore her, to brush off the little comments, but they started coming more often, sharper each time. Then she began comparing everything: our homes, our clothes, even how we raised our son. She'd brag about how much better her husband treated her, how much more successful he was than Harry, and yet I could see the bitterness behind her smile. I remember one dinner where she accidentally spilled wine on my dress, then laughed and said, "Guess karma wanted to humble you." Harry told her to apologize, but she just rolled her eyes, muttering, "You've gotten soft since marrying her." I started feeling anxious before every family gathering, wondering what she'd say or do next. Then the rumors started. She told distant relatives that I was manipulative, that I was driving a wedge between her and her brother, that I'd changed him. The final straw was when someone asked Harry if he'd taken a paternity test because Kayla had told them our son didn't look like him. That night, I broke down. Harry confronted her, furious, and she played innocent, pretending it was a joke that got twisted. He tried to cut her off again, but deep down, I knew she wouldn't stop. Kayla didn't want peace. She wanted to hurt me, to remind me that she could still reach into our lives and cause chaos whenever she wanted. Months passed, and though we tried to move forward, Kayla's presence hung over everything like a dark cloud that refused to fade. Harry's birthday was coming up, and I wanted it to be special, a day filled with laughter, love, and no drama. We'd been through enough, and I wanted to give him a celebration that reminded him of all the good things we still had. We planned a small family party at home, inviting only close friends and relatives. The best part was our little secret. We were going to announce that we were expecting our second baby. I had butterflies in my stomach just thinking about it. Harry was over the moon, and for once, life felt light again. But the one thing I wasn't sure about was Kayla. I didn't want her there, not after everything she'd done, but Harry insisted. "She's still my sister," he said softly. "Maybe this time will be different." I hesitated but agreed, because deep down, I knew how much family meant to him. A few days before the party, Kayla texted me out of nowhere. Her message was unusually sweet. She said she wanted to make amends and celebrate Harry's big day together like old times. She even offered to bring food, saying she wanted to contribute. I showed the text to Harry, and he smiled, saying maybe she'd finally grown up. I wanted to believe that too. Maybe she had changed. Maybe the years of drama were finally behind us. But something in her tone felt too polished, too practiced. Still, I ignored my gut. I told myself I was just overthinking. I had no idea that her words weren't an olive branch, they were bait. Because while I was preparing for a celebration, Kayla was preparing for revenge. The day of the party arrived, and everything felt perfect, or at least it started that way. The house was glowing with fairy lights, soft music played in the background, and the scent of food filled the air. Friends and family gathered, laughing and sharing stories. Harry looked genuinely happy, which made my heart swell. I'd spent weeks planning every little detail because I wanted it to be a night he'd never forget. Kayla arrived later than everyone else, dressed to impress in a glittering gold dress that screamed for attention. She brought a tray of cupcakes, smiling as if she hadn't spent years trying to tear me apart. I forced a polite smile, but something about her eyes felt wrong, too calm, too calculating. Throughout the evening, she was unusually charming, mingling with everyone, showering compliments, and acting like the perfect sister. Even I started to let my guard down, thinking maybe, just maybe, she was sincere this time. As dinner ended and people began to gather around the cake, Harry gave a small speech thanking everyone for coming. Then it was my turn. My hands trembled as I held the microphone, my heart racing with excitement. "We actually have a little surprise," I said, glancing at Harry. His eyes sparkled as he nodded for me to go on. "We are expecting another baby." The room erupted in cheers and claps. People hugged us, and I felt tears of joy streaming down my face. Everyone seemed genuinely happy, everyone except Kayla. Her smile faltered for a second before she quickly recovered, clapping with exaggerated enthusiasm. But her eyes, they told a different story. Behind that painted smile, there was a flicker of fury. I didn't realize it then, but that moment, our announcement, was the spark that lit the fire of her next cruel plan. After the announcement, the night carried on with laughter and celebration, but something about Kayla's energy shifted. She lingered near the drinks table, her fake smile plastered on her face, sipping glass after glass of wine. Every time our eyes met, I could feel the tension radiating from her. At one point, she pulled Harry aside, whispering something in his ear that made his smile fade. When I walked over, she immediately changed the subject, pretending she was just joking about something from their childhood. I brushed it off, trying not to let her ruin the night. Later, as everyone gathered around to dance, Kayla insisted on giving a toast. I hesitated, my gut screaming that it was a bad idea, but before I could say anything, Harry nodded and handed her the MIC. She stood up, glass in hand, her eyes glistening with something that wasn't joy. "To my dear brother and his perfect wife," she began, her tone dripping with sarcasm masked as affection. "You two are really the picture of happiness. Always so, perfect. Almost too perfect, if you ask me." The room fell silent. I froze, forcing a smile, but my heart pounded in my chest. She took another sip of wine and continued, "It's funny how life works, isn't it? Some of us lose everything, while others just seem to collect blessings." Her words sliced through the air, heavy with venom. People shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to laugh or stay quiet. Harry stepped forward to stop her, but she waved him off. "Relax, it's just a toast," she said with a smirk. I could feel my stomach twisting. Something wasn't right. That wasn't a toast, it was the start of something ugly. And deep down, I could feel it. Kayla wasn't finished yet. She was just getting started. After that uncomfortable toast, the energy in the room changed. The laughter that once filled the air now felt forced, brittle, like everyone was waiting for something to go wrong. I tried to hold it together, smiling for the sake of the guests, but my chest felt tight. Harry was tense too. I could see it in his clenched jaw, the way his hand gripped mine a little too hard. Kayla, however, looked pleased with herself. She floated through the room, pretending nothing was wrong, chatting and laughing with people who clearly didn't know how to respond to her anymore. Then she began dropping little comments, almost as if testing the waters. I overheard her whispering to one of Harry's friends. You know, she wasn't even sure who the father was at first, followed by a fake laugh that sent a chill down my spine. I turned around, my blood boiling, but when I caught her eye, she just smiled innocently, raising her glass like we were in on some private joke. I wanted to call her out right there, but I couldn't bring myself to make a scene in front of everyone. Instead, I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Harry noticed my expression and asked what happened, but I just shook my head. I didn't want to ruin his birthday more than she already had. But inside, my anger burned. The way she smirked, the way she played her game so carefully, it all made me realize that her toast wasn't a drunken slip. It was a setup, a calculated move to humiliate me in front of everyone. I told myself that if she crossed one more line, I wouldn't stay quiet. But I had no idea that the next line she crossed would shatter everything that came after. The night was winding down, guests were starting to leave, and for a brief moment, I thought maybe the worst was over. Harry was cleaning up with a few friends while I chatted with his parents in the living room. That's when I noticed Kayla had disappeared. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she'd gone outside for some air or to sober up. But a few minutes later, I heard commotion coming from the backyard. Curious and a little uneasy, I walked over, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Kayla was standing on a chair, holding a glass of wine in one hand and her phone in the other, recording herself as she shouted, "Let's play a little game of truth tonight." People turned their heads, confused and uneasy. I tried to tell her to stop, but she ignored me, her voice growing louder. "You all think my brother married a saint," she said, slurring slightly. "But maybe he doesn't know everything about his perfect little wife." My heart started pounding so fast I thought I might faint. "Kayla, stop it!" Harry shouted, storming toward her. She laughed bitterly. "Oh, now you care. Maybe you should ask your wife what she was doing the night before your wedding." Gasps filled the air. My hands trembled as I felt every pair of eyes turn toward me. I wanted to scream, to deny it, to shut her up, but my throat felt frozen. Harry's face turned white, pure shock written all over it. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. Kayla smirked, stepping down from the chair. "Ask her," she hissed. "Ask your loyal wife." It was chaos, people whispering, phones recording, my heart shattering piece by piece. And that's when I realized, her plan wasn't humiliation. It was total destruction. The world seemed to blur around me as Kayla's words echoed in the air. The music had stopped, the laughter was gone, and all that remained was the heavy, suffocating silence of disbelief. I could see Harry's confusion turn into anger, his eyes darting between me and his sister. "What the hell is she talking about?" he asked, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and fear. I opened my mouth to speak, but Kayla beat me to it, pulling out her phone and waving it around like a weapon. "Don't play innocent," she sneered. "I have proof." My stomach dropped. "Proof of what?" I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. With a wicked grin, she pressed play on a video. On the screen, there I was, sitting at a bar with an old friend from college, laughing over drinks the night before my wedding. The camera angle made it look intimate, misleading. Gasps spread through the crowd. Kayla paused the video right as my friend leaned closer to whisper something. "Looks cozy, doesn't it?" she taunted. My heart pounded as I tried to explain. "That's not what it looks like." He was just, but no one seemed to hear me. Harry's face was pale, his jaw clenched tight. "You said you stayed in with your bridesmaids that night," he said quietly, his voice breaking. "I did. I just met him for an hour to say goodbye. He was moving overseas." I cried. But Kayla wasn't done. "Oh please," she scoffed. "You expect him to believe that?" She turned to the guests. "See? She's always been a liar." I felt tears sting my eyes as I looked around. Everyone was staring. My celebration had turned into a nightmare, and in that moment, Kayla got exactly what she wanted. My humiliation, my pain, and my husband's doubt. The night spiraled into chaos after that. People were whispering, recording, and exchanging looks that cut deeper than words ever could. I tried to reach for Harry's hand, but he stepped back, his eyes clouded with confusion and betrayal. "I just need a minute," he said, his voice shaking, and those 4 words shattered me more than Kayla's lies ever could. He walked out to the front yard, leaving me standing there surrounded by murmurs and judgment. Kayla stood smugly near the table, pretending to act hurt. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she said softly to Harry's parents, her fake tears falling like poison. "I just thought he deserved to know the truth." I wanted to scream, to tell everyone she was manipulating them, but every time I opened my mouth, she twisted the story further, painting herself as the protective sister who only wanted to save her brother from heartbreak. A few of Harry's friends followed him outside, trying to calm him down, while others quietly slipped out, not wanting to be part of the drama. My cheeks burned with humiliation. I could feel my pulse racing, my stomach twisting with nausea. I finally ran out to find Harry sitting on the porch steps, his face buried in his hands. "Harry, please listen to me," I begged, tears streaming down my face. "It's not what it looked like. I swear, nothing happened." He looked up at me, his eyes full of hurt. "Why didn't you just tell me you met him?" he whispered. "I didn't think it mattered," I said desperately. "It was innocent." Before he could reply, Kayla appeared behind us, pretending to check on him. "Are you okay, brother?" she asked sweetly, her eyes meeting mine with cold satisfaction. In that instant, I realized she wasn't finished destroying me. The days that followed felt like living inside a storm I couldn't escape. Harry grew distant, barely speaking to me except in short, clipped sentences. The once warm home we built together now felt cold and heavy with silence. I kept trying to talk to him, to make him see reason, but every conversation ended with the same haunted look in his eyes. "I just need time," he'd say, but the time between us only made the distance grow. Kayla, of course, took full advantage of it. She showed up uninvited under the excuse of checking on her brother, bringing him food, offering fake comfort, pretending to be the caring sister while I became the villain in her story. I overheard her one afternoon telling him, "I just hate seeing you like this, Harry. You deserve someone who's honest with you." It took everything in me not to scream. Her manipulation was so smooth, so perfectly performed, that even his parents started to doubt me. I could feel their judgment in their stares, the way they spoke to me in half sentences, hesitant and polite. I started to question myself, replaying that night at the bar over and over, wishing I'd never gone, wishing I'd never given Kayla any weapon to use against me. Then came the cruelest blow. Harry moved into the guest room. He said it was temporary, that he needed space to think, but I knew the damage was already done. Kayla had planted her poison deep. I lay awake at night, crying quietly so he wouldn't hear, wondering how someone could hate me so much, how she could destroy everything just because she couldn't stand to see me happy. I didn't know it yet, but fate had already started turning the tables. And soon, her own lies would trap her. A week later, when I thought things couldn't possibly get worse, karma began to stir in ways none of us saw coming. It started with a phone call in the middle of the night. Harry's parents called us, their voices shaking. They had just gotten a visit from Kayla's husband, Mark. Apparently, he had seen the same video she played at the party, but what caught his attention wasn't me. It was the voice in the background. Someone could be heard whispering to Kayla, and that voice sounded disturbingly familiar. Male, affectionate, and definitely not her brother's. Rumors began to spread fast, and within days, the truth started unraveling. Mark confronted Kayla at her workplace, demanding answers. People witnessed the scene, her trying to deny everything while he shouted that he had proof. Someone had sent him screenshots and recordings from her phone, ones that exposed her affair with a coworker she had been secretly seeing for months. The same woman who tried to destroy my marriage had been cheating in her own. The irony was almost poetic. Harry found out soon after, and I'll never forget the look on his face, not anger, but disbelief. "She did all that to you while she was the one lying," he said quietly. For the first time in weeks, I saw his eyes soften when he looked at me. The wall between us began to crack. Kayla tried to spin the story, claiming she was set up, but no one believed her anymore. Her husband filed for divorce, and the family finally saw her for who she truly was, a manipulative, bitter woman who thrived on destroying others. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I just felt relief. The truth had finally started catching up to her, and it wasn't done yet. When Kayla's affair became public, everything she had built her false reputation on crumbled overnight. Friends who once laughed at her jokes stopped taking her calls. Her husband moved out and filed for divorce, citing emotional abuse and infidelity. Her workplace suspended her after discovering she'd been using company resources to stalk and manipulate people online, including me. Apparently, she'd created fake accounts to spread rumors, even messaging people from our circle pretending to be me. It was all unraveling, faster than she could control it. Harry's parents were devastated, ashamed of how they'd defended her for so long. I still remember sitting quietly in their living room as her mother broke down crying, whispering, how could she do this to her own brother? Harry just sat there, silent, his expression caught between fury and heartbreak. Days later, Kayla showed up at our house unannounced, mascara streaked down her cheeks, screaming for Harry to believe her. "She set me up," she cried, pointing at me like a madwoman. "She's the reason my life is falling apart." Her voice cracked, desperate, but her eyes were still cold, wild with denial. Harry didn't even flinch. "No, Kayla," he said quietly, his tone calm but final. "You did this to yourself." She froze, stunned that her manipulation no longer worked. For the first time, she saw she'd lost control. She stormed off, cursing and crying, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I stood there, trembling, unsure whether to feel pity or satisfaction. It was the end of her power over us. That night, for the first time in months, Harry sat beside me on the couch, took my hand, and whispered, "I'm sorry for not believing you." I broke down in his arms, and for a long time, we just held each other in silence, finally free from her poison. In the weeks that followed, it felt like a heavy fog had finally lifted from our lives. Harry and I slowly started finding our way back to each other, piece by piece, rebuilding the trust that Kayla's lies had shattered. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt, quiet pauses in conversation where the weight of everything lingered. But this time, we were both fighting for our marriage, not against each other. We talked late into the nights, really talked, about how we'd let other people come between us, about fear, about trust, about forgiveness. I could see in his eyes that he regretted not standing by me sooner, and I knew I had to let go of the pain if we wanted to move forward. Meanwhile, Kayla's life spiraled further out of control. Her divorce was finalized, her reputation destroyed, and her bitterness finally caught up to her in the most unexpected way. One evening, we got a call from the police. Kayla had been arrested after causing a scene at a local restaurant. She'd gotten into a fight with her ex-husband's new girlfriend, screaming and throwing things. Someone filmed it, and the video went viral. Seeing her handcuffed, shouting nonsense as officers led her away, was surreal. I didn't feel joy, just a strange, quiet sense of closure. Karma had done what I couldn't. When I showed the news clip to Harry, he just sighed deeply and said, "I wish she'd chosen a different path." I nodded, feeling a bittersweet ache in my chest. Despite everything, she was still his sister, and part of me still pitied her. But as I looked around at my peaceful home and felt our baby kick gently inside me, I realized something profound. Sometimes, peace only comes after the storm destroys everything false. Months passed, and for the first time in what felt like forever, life began to feel normal again. The tension, the whispers, the constant fear of what Kayla might do next, it was all gone. Harry and I welcomed our baby girl into the world, and holding her in my arms felt like the final piece of healing our family needed. The moment he looked at her, tears welled up in his eyes, and he whispered, "We made it." I knew exactly what he meant. The pain, the chaos, the betrayal, it had all led us here, to this moment of peace and love. Our home was filled with laughter again, soft lullabies, and the warmth of a love that had been tested but not broken. Even Harry's parents started spending more time with us, their guilt slowly easing as they watched us rebuild. But sometimes, when the house was quiet, I'd catch myself thinking about Kayla. She was still in and out of court over the incident, facing charges for assault and public misconduct. We heard she'd moved back in with a distant relative, trying to start over, though most people in town wanted nothing to do with her anymore. I didn't hate her, not anymore. The anger had burned itself out, leaving only a quiet sadness for what she could have been if she hadn't let jealousy consume her. Sometimes life doesn't punish people instantly, but when it does, it's often poetic. I learned that peace isn't about revenge or proving someone wrong. It's about finally being free from their hold. As I rocked my daughter to sleep one night, I whispered a silent promise to protect her from that kind of bitterness, to raise her in love, not envy. Because in the end, that's what truly destroys people, their own darkness. Time moved on, and the chaos that once defined our lives slowly faded into a distant memory. Harry and I found our rhythm again, late-night talks, shared laughter, the quiet joy of raising our two children together. Our love felt deeper now, forged through pain, misunderstanding, and forgiveness. Sometimes, when we sat together on the porch, watching our kids play in the garden, we'd talk about everything we'd been through. There was no bitterness left, only gratitude that we'd survived something meant to break us. Harry often said, "It's strange how life teaches you who truly stands with you," and he was right. The storm had revealed everything, the strength of our bond, the fragility of trust, and the cost of jealousy. As for Kayla, we rarely heard from her anymore. Last I knew, she had moved to another city, trying to rebuild her life quietly. I sometimes wondered if she ever regretted what she'd done or realized how much pain she caused. But I no longer wished for her downfall or her suffering. I'd learned that revenge doesn't heal, peace does. I had chosen to let go. One evening, as I tucked our children into bed, Harry came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, whispering, "You know, I still can't believe how lucky I am to have you." I turned, smiling softly, and said, "We are lucky to have each other." For a long time, I believed Kayla had ruined us, but now I understood. She had only tested us, and in surviving her storm, would become stronger than ever. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was ours. And as I looked around at everything we'd rebuilt from the ashes, I knew one thing for sure. Sometimes destruction is what clears the path for something beautiful to grow.